This is chapter 5, notes. We've made it to chapter 5 of our book. As with every chapter, I want to begin with a quote. To put down your own thoughts, you must put down your own words. Because this chapter is about taking good notes and adequate notes, I definitely feel that this quote resembles what I want to share with you guys. To put down your own thoughts, you must put down your own words. Let's talk about what you'll learn in this chapter. You're going to be learning note-taking and how it helps you remember information. You're going to be learning how the note-taking process flows. You're going to be learning about observing, recording, and reviewing. You're going to learn how to turn PowerPoints into powerful notes, what to do when your instructor talks quickly, taking notes while reading, and taking effective notes for online coursework, which is something that can be applicable to this class, but also others that you might take in the future. Let's talk about, as with every chapter, the why, the how, the what, and the what if. Why this chapter is important. Hopefully it'll help you remember information and do better on tests. The more you master the note-taking process, hopefully it'll help you to do better academically wise in the future. The how. As with every chapter, skim this chapter for 3 techniques you'd like to try this week or within the month or with your next class. The what if your notes could remain useful for weeks or even years? That's something that you can definitely benefit from. And the what, you're going to be learning about notes with the power process. I created all the note-taking process flows, taking notes while reading, and SMART note-taking, an acronym that we're going to be learning about. Let's talk about the note-taking process and flows. One way to understand note-taking is to realize that taking notes is just one part of the process. Effective note-taking consists of 3 parts: observing, recording, and reviewing. First, you observe an event. This can be something your professor said, or a lab experiment, or a chapter of required reading. Then you record your observations of that event, that is, you take notes. And finally, you review what you have recorded. You memorize, you reflect, and apply and rehearse what you're reading, what you're learning. Each part of the process is essential. Your observations determine what you record. What you record determines what you review. And the quality of your review can determine how effective your next observations will be. Example, let's say you observe and take good notes on a lecture of World War I in your history class. You will likely understand World War II more if you took adequate notes for World War I. Having legible handwriting also is useful when taking notes. Knowledge of outlining is also helpful. But all the tools are worthless unless you participate as an energetic observer in class and regularly review your notes after class. Taking this approach allows you to go from passive observer to active participant. This skill is to learn while taking notes, not to take notes to learn later. In your higher education path, you might probably spend hundreds of hours taking notes. Believe me, I've gone through undergraduate and graduate work. And making notes more effectively is a direct investment in your education and a skill that you can translate into every course you take. When you're observing something, let's say a lecture, actively observe, take good notes, and review once you get home. Let's talk about the process of observing. There is definitely a lot of information in front of you. As you're reading, also listen to what I'm saying. So when we observe, we are actively taking in information. Think of yourself in a vacation. Think about the last one you took to somewhere new. I just got back from China recently, and I remember going to the Longmen Grottos in the Henan province of China, where I saw the Vairocana Buddha. And the sheer size and splendor is something that I definitely observed with detail while I was there, and I can recall features of the statue, even if I'm not there anymore. Similarly, your account can save you money by observing the details of a spreadsheet. Your doctor can save you from an illness if he observes your symptoms. You can save yourself hours of study time by observing what the professor writes or teaches. Let's start from some tips. Set the stage. Complete outside assignments. Make sure you know the subject before hearing about it in class. Reading beforehand is something that is very valuable. The more familiar you are with the information, the more you can absorb more important information during class. Bring the right materials. A good pen does not make you a good observer, but the lack of a pen or a notebook can be distracting to your concentration. Sit front and center. Students who sit closer to the front often do better on tests for several reasons. The closer you are, the harder it is to fall asleep if there is lacking light during a lecture. The fewer distractions there are as well. Material on the board is closer, you might see it better. You might feel more comfortable asking questions if the professor is directly in front of you. Conduct a pre-class review. Arrive early to class if possible. Review the notes from the previous class. Scan today's lecture, the chapter, or the PowerPoint slides the professor might have posted beforehand. Let's talk about be here in the now. Accept that your mind might wander. Accept it. Notice when it happens and refocus. It happens to all of us. If you found yourself drifting and you really didn't hear what the professor said, make sure you raise your hand and politely ask if the professor can repeat that. Notice your writing. Pay attention to the act of writing. Feel your pen. Pay attention can bring you back to the present. Be with the instructor. Follow their words. Imagine that the two of you are having a one-on-one conversation. Pay attention to the body language, the gestures, the voice tone. It will tell you what the professor is emphasizing in the lecture. Sometimes even you can hear it on my voice. I say, be here in the now. When a professor says something with an added emphasis, it might be something that will be on the test. So make sure you pay attention. Notice your environment. Feel the room, the chair, the light, the air. When you're slipping, come back to the room and to the lecture. Postpone a debate. If you hear something that you disagree with, instructor or student comment, just let it go. Don't allow your internal dialogue to drown down the material you are listening to. If it is too much, then by all means raise your hand and speak up, just so that you're not distracted by your internal dialogue. Watch for clues. Be alert to repetition. When the instructor repeats a phrase or an idea, make note. It is important information. Watch the PowerPoint. If it's on the slide, it is a suggestion that it is important. Let's talk about recording. The format and the structure of your notes are more important than how fast you write or how elegant the writing is. Some general techniques for note-taking. Use keywords. Use concepts, technical terms, names and numbers, linking words. Keywords evoke images and associations with other words and ideas. They trigger your memory. In a chapter section, make note of what words are described. Let's go to page 157 of the book. There is a passage and the keywords were at the bottom. Read the highlighted sections on the next pages. In front of you, you're going to be reading some elements described on page 158 and 159 on how to record notes effectively. It starts with write notes in paragraphs, copy materials from the board or a PowerPoint presentation, use a 3-ring binder, use one side of a piece of paper, use 3x5 cards, keep your own thoughts separate, use an I am lost signal, label, number, and date all notes, use standard abbreviations, leave blank space, take notes in different colors, use graphic signals, and use recorders effectively. Make sure that you go through each one of these recommendations on page 158 and 159 of your chapter. Continuing on with this is located on page 159 from your book. These images in front of you, where you have information that belongs together using these symbols, these are things that I definitely use or used when I was going through school, especially the question mark, where I would question or label things in my notes with a question mark saying or I'm lost. Double question mark would mean clear up immediately, I'm definitely lost. The arrows leads to becomes what, greater than, less than symbols, things that are extra important, definitely the asterisks, or important, anything that you can use to make your note-taking more effective. Definitely using these graphic signals have helped me get through school, and they are definitely exercises and techniques that I would recommend you use for the further of your classes. If we go still with recording, this is on pages 159 to 160. Combining formats, there is the Cornell method, there is also the outlining method, and the mind mapping. If you look at the outlining exercise in front of you, this is something that I do all the time, and definitely students that I see being more effective in school utilize. So if you notice where it says first double heading on outlining, part 1 says muscle reading includes 3 phases. That's the first thing that you want to note-take about. Now, what are those 3 phases? That would be a second level heading. Make sure you indent that. Phase 1 before reading, preview, outline, question. That is a third level heading. If you outline the title, the first level heading would be what you're talking about. The second level heading will be what you're going to describe, and the third level heading would be what you're actually describing in steps. If you follow an outline, it's easier to study, definitely. When we talk about mind mapping, it's basically creating a map in your mind of how things are connected. If you notice for this one, we're talking about muscle reading. Number 1, the steps were preview, outline, and question. Step 2, focus and flag answers. And step 3, recite, review, and review again. A learner would do the steps of preview, reading, and reciting. Mind mapping is a way to combine everything you're reading. A lot of students like mind mapping more than outlining. It is definitely what your preference is. You definitely want to play with some of these exercises and techniques to see the one that is more effective for you. Now I'm going to describe the Cornell method. The Cornell method is a note-taking system that has worked for students around the world. Definitely something I've used before. Originally, it was developed at Cornell University during the 1950s. It's an approach that continues to be taught across the United States. Some other countries use it as well. The cornerstone of this method is what's called the cue column. And if you notice in front of you, there's a cue column and there's a notes column. There are some benefits. One quick way to do this is to just format your paper beforehand, before a lecture. Each side of your note paper, draw a vertical line, top to bottom, about 2 inches from the left edge of the paper. This line creates the cue column, the space to the left of the line. As your professor is lecturing, or as you read an assignment or listen to a lecture, take notes on the right-hand side of the paper. Fill up this column with sentences, paragraphs, outlines, charts, or drawings. Do not write in the cue column. You'll use this space later as you do the next steps. Condense your notes in the Q column. Think of the notes you took on the right-hand side of the paper as a set of answers. In the Q column, list potential test questions that correspond to your notes. Write one question for each major term or point. Then at the bottom, you have your summary area. It was recommended by the creators of the Cornell method that you reduce your notes even more by writing a brief summary at the bottom of each page. This step offers you another way to engage actively with the material. So whether you're using the Cornell method, outlining, or mind mapping, or all three, any of these three methods can help you record your notes better. Let's talk about reviewing. Think of reviewing as an integral part of note-taking rather than an added task. One of the best things you can do that I keep repeating is review within 24 hours. When you review within 24 hours, your information can go from short-term memory to long-term memory, and this is helpful. On page 162 of your book, you can definitely talk about and read about the note-taking process and how it flows, and talk about each one of these bullets in front of you more in depth. I will definitely recommend that reviewing within 24 hours is one of the best things that you can do. Also, editing your notes. During your first review, if you fix words that are illegible, or you write out abbreviated words that might be unclear to you later, when you're editing, you're rereading everything. And when you're rereading, you're understanding what you read. So definitely editing your notes is one of the best things you can do. The Cornell method is also something that's listed here under review. Filling in words in the left-hand column is also making you practice and reread and re-understand your notes. Also recite with key words. Cover your notes with a blank sheet of paper so that you can see only the words in the left-hand margin, and take each word in order and recite as much as you can about the point. When you're reciting something and using your own words, you're actually studying without knowing it. And do short weekly reviews. Ideally, review within 24 hours, and weekly you could also do the review, especially of material that you find more difficult to understand. Consider typing notes. Actually, when you type notes, it engages the process of reading your notes and actually making sense of them and understanding, why did I even write that? If you don't type it, which tends to have you do a more physical exercise because you're actually putting energy into retyping your notes, you will definitely write more effective notes. Creating summaries is one of the best things you can do. We just talked about that in the Cornell method. And evaluate as well. With evaluate, while you're reviewing, evaluate your notes is one of the most essential things you can do. When you're holding review sessions, even in groups or by yourself, review sessions are an excellent time to look beyond the content of your notes and actually reflect on your note-taking process. Comparing notes with other classmates can actually help you find better techniques. Remember, the common goals of note-taking are reducing the course content to its essentials, organizing the course content, and demonstrating that you understand the content. If you can do that with your notes, you've already mastered the note-taking process. Let's talk about what to do when your instructor talks quickly. I definitely can be the type of instructor that can talk very quickly when I'm lecturing on a face-to-face class. Online is different because I can take my time. I'm actually focusing on what I want to tell you, and I'm not distracted by maybe trying to monitor if people are on their cell phones or are actually taking notes on their laptops and not just browsing the internet. So definitely, when your instructor talks quickly, there are some things that you can do. I want you to look at page 165 that you want to read through. There are definitely too many of things you can do for me to go through one by one. But one thing you have to do is, if you are noticing that your instructor talks way too fast, You need to take more time to prepare for class. You need to be reading your chapter before you go to class and actually going through your syllabus to know what your instructor is going to cover for that week. Because if you don't prepare before class, you're going to miss a lot of things while the professor's lecturing. Be willing to make choices. You will have to focus your attention on key points. Instead of trying to write everything that your instructor says, you have to choose what you think is important. Occasionally, you will make a less than perfect choice or even neglect a certain point, but worse things could happen. You have to stay with the lecture, you have to write down keywords and revise your notes immediately after class. Exchange notes with classmates. Definitely talk to your fellow students and maybe ask them about what you wrote down that you might have missed, or maybe they missed and you have the notes. So comparing notes is one of the best things you can do. And when you have your study groups, it's definitely the best time to compare notes. Leave large empty spaces in your notes. Leave plenty of room for filling in information later. Use a symbol that signals that you missed something so you can remember to come back to it or look for it in the chapter, or even ask your instructor after class or before class, or maybe send them an email. Also see the instructor after class. When your instructor has office hours, take your notes with you and show the instructor what you missed and ask questions. Use an audio recorder, but ask first. Not all instructors are comfortable with you recording what they say. If the instructor is okay with that, make sure you do it. But if the instructor is not okay with that, you definitely do not want to be recording without permission. Before class, take notes on your reading. So you can take detailed notes on the text before coming to class. Just make sure that you read it. And if you can, you actually will muscle read, correct? And also leave blank space so that as you're going through the lecture in class, you simply add notes that your instructor said during class. Go to the lecture again in another section. So many classes are taught in multiple sections, right? If your instructor allows for this, if you have time, you can even visit your same instructor when they're giving out the same lecture, but in another class time. Definitely ask if you're okay to do that. And like anything, ask questions. Even if you're totally lost, many instructors allow a question session at the end or during. So definitely ask questions about things you might have missed. If you feel comfortable with the instructor before or after class, if you can let them know that maybe they're lecturing too fast for you, is something that maybe the instructor can accommodate for. Let's talk about taking notes while reading and some strategies. These will come from pages 166 and 167 from your book. When you're reviewing your notes, you definitely want to prioritize and condense into key quotes. Condense by paraphrasing how you would say something, how you would say it to another student, and always look for the table of contents. When we say condense into key quotes, authors embed their essential ideas in key sentences. As you read, continually ask yourself, what's the point of something? You don't want to just write notes without knowing what's the point of it. You don't want to memorize, you want to understand. So condensing into key quotes that answer the question, what's the point, is actually going to make you study best. Also condense by paraphrasing. Pretend that you have to summarize a chapter, an article, or a book on a postcard. Limit yourself to a single paragraph or a single sentence and use your own words. This is a great way to test your understanding of the material. And always review the table of content. Look at the table of content in your book. Write each measure heading on a piece of paper, or key those headings into a word processing file on your computer. Include the page numbers, and next, see whether you can improve on the table of content based on your notes. Also, research notes. Take research notes when preparing to write a paper or deliver a speech. One traditional method of research is to take notes on index cards. Everybody does that. You write on the front of it the key concept, and on the back of it, you actually write what the definition is. So use index cards. It's one of the best ways to study. As you're writing them down, you're actually also studying because you're going to physically write with your hands, and that kinesthetic action is going to help you remember too. It's also going to make you remember based on you seeing it with your eyes, and you can remember in what part of the index card you wrote a key definition. Also, use a computer. So using a computer and retyping your notes is one of the best things you can do. We actually said that in a few slides ago, but using a computer and retyping notes is one of the best things you can do, because the act of having to retype your notes is definitely going to make you not want to type as much, so you will only be typing the key concepts. And include your sources. No matter whether you use cards or a computer, be sure to include a source for each note that you take. Say, for example, that you find a useful quotation from a book. You want to include that quotation in your paper. Copy that quotation word for word on a card, or key the quotation into a computer file. Along with the quotation, note the book's author, title, date, and place of publication. You're going to actually need this information later as you list your sources for any paper, so make sure that you don't have to scramble for it afterwards. And for next to the last slide from this chapter, let's talk about taking notes for online coursework. Taking notes in online classes is also unique. There are ways to organize to get active and focus in an online class. Let's talk about some tools for the class you're currently taking. So on pages 170 and 171, there are some skills and techniques for taking effective notes for online coursework. Let's talk about some of these. Contact students. One of the things that you have available for you in online work is a discussion board. Contacting students and asking questions specifically in an area in your discussion board designed for you to ask questions that can be answered by other students or the instructor is one of the best things you can do. Getting feedback from them in the discussion board is something that's going to make your ideas greater or improve on them. There's always room for improvement. Use specialized help tools. The discussion board is definitely one of the best ways you can reach the instructor and other students. If there are any other ways that your instructor has noted in online coursework for you to use other tools, use those. So make sure you always review your syllabus before you're doing something online. Managing time and tasks carefully. One of the things that I recommend for any online class is that you know your syllabus front and back, and you know your deadlines, because you need to manage your time if your class is accelerated and if your class needs for you to do tasks at a certain pace. For this class, you know you have a discussion board for every chapter, you know you have your journals to complete, you know you have your assignments and your midterm and your final, and you have your date for everything. Make sure you know your deadlines and you plan carefully. And it's okay to ask for help. Ask your instructor, ask other students if you're stuck with something. Have folders and files of everything that your instructor is going to post. If that is actually, let's say, if you have information for every chapter, make a folder if your instructor is going to let you download lecture slides, and have a folder for chapter 1, 2, 3, and so on and so forth, and anything embedded into those chapters that your instructor is going to post. Take notes. As you're going through this PowerPoint presentation, and you can view it on YouTube, you're going to find that it has captions. Take notes based on what you're hearing in my voice, and take notes based on me lecturing. Even though you're not seeing my face, you are hearing me. So take notes based on what I'm saying. One of the skills I want to recommend is developing a contingency plan. So technology tends to break down at the moment of greatest inconvenience, and definitely I am an understanding professor. However, there are times when a late work will not be accepted no matter the circumstances, because depending on how much time we have in our class, it's just not available for me to grade, and it's not possible for me, nor can it be for another instructor. So have a contingency plan. Find a technology buddy in each of your classes, someone who can contact the instructor if you lose internet access or experience other computer problems. Every day, make backup copies of files created for your courses, and keep extra printer supplies, paper and toner or ink cartridges on hand at all times. The last thing I want to say with this chapter is consider the real possibility that an online course can take even more time than a traditional face-to-face lecture class. Online courses tend to embrace lots of activities, sending and receiving emails, writing those emails, joining the discussion forums, commenting on blogs, being graded on commenting, and more. So make sure that before you continue with an online class, you read your syllabus, you know what you're getting yourself into, and you plan accordingly, specifically if you're taking a short-term class that's accelerated, because your grade will be a grade depending on the manner of work and the amount of work you do. I will see you guys for the next chapter. Thank you.